Statement wins across the Big 12. See which teams made their presence felt in Week 5. And Texas Tech looks to keep firing on all cylinders as they head to Tucson for a battle versus Arizona. All that and much more coming up right now on Inside the 12. Hello and welcome into Inside the 12 alongside Pete Souza. I'm Madison Hawk. We're entering Week 6 of the college football season, and the Big 12 has lived up to its hype. Pete, half of the games in conference play have all been decided by one score.
A powerful conference with parity, and also has a few teams that have risen to the top. BYU, one of them, 5-0 for the first time since Robbie Bosco was the quarterback back in 1984.
Wow, and now they have a much-needed bye week as well. One game that wasn't close, Oklahoma State at Kansas State. It was a top 25 matchup where the Cowboys were looking to get back on track. However, the Wildcats controlled the tempo from the start in large part thanks to dual-threat quarterback Avery Johnson. 5 touchdowns for him, 3 passing, 2 on the ground. And Pete, that's why he was named the Big 12's Offensive Player of the Week.
Yeah, hand this guy the hardware. Remember, just 19 years of age. We are seeing his growth and maturation process right before our eyes. And here is a piece of that. Noticing he's got real estate to move in the red zone, darting to the corner of the end zone for a touchdown. Did it with his legs, and this is what makes him so dynamic, Madison. Doing it with his arm, throwing behind the coverage. And Chris Kleiman has talked about his game management and how much that has improved. And he's allowed the game to come to him. Somebody who took over the game, DJ Giddings, showing the ability to be a decisive runner, using vision, and actually running tall because he's got such confidence and swagger. Here he is with yards after contact. Kansas State doing it, throwing and running the football.
To your point, Avery Johnson, just 19 years old, but to have that game management already, that's going to be really impressive for the Wildcats to see develop even more throughout this season. We take a look now at the Week 5 scoreboard. TCU with a huge win over Kansas. Iowa State stays unbeaten with a shutout of Houston. Huge shout out to head coach Matt Campbell for becoming the winningest coach in program history.
Yeah, always good to get a win on the road in the Big 12. And wasn't a great game numbers-wise for Rocco Beck. Only 153 passing yards, but he did just enough to get the job done. That defense for the Cyclones is looking very good.
You saw that Utah score as well. That was the biggest surprise in Week 5. Number 10, Utah upset by Arizona 23-10. Utah, once again, had to play without starting quarterback Cam Rising. Freshman Isaac Wilson has stepped up in his place. He moved the ball really well, but he just couldn't convert in the red zone.
Well, 4 fourth down stops on the night for Arizona. That's one of them right there. And we see the moxie by Noah Fifita, just rolling right, dumping off the football, throwing off his back foot there. You maybe like to see him throw off his front foot. Well, you don't have to wait long. Launching this pass into the end zone. His ability to extend plays allows his receivers to get behind the coverage. What a dart that was right there. He has shown the ability. And now here's that defense we talked about. Isaac Wilson throwing into coverage. Gunnar Maldonado not going for the big hit, going for the ball. Keep in mind, Isaac Wilson is a 19-year-old true freshman quarterback. Cam Rising, 25 years old. That's a stark contrast as far as experience. And you'd like to think, if you're a Utah fan, that Cam Rising's experience will help you make those plays in the future.
And because of everything you just said, Utah on a bye week this week, it couldn't have come at a better time. Colorado traveled to undefeated UCF and won big, 48-21 the final, which means it is time for What's Your Beef, brought to you by Old Trapper Beef Jerky. Pete, I know you've got some beef with Colorado right now.
I still have beef, not with Colorado, but with the fact that they're not ranked. And as we look at some of this video, it speaks for itself. Colorado on the road at UCF. Coach Prime called it a complete performance by his team, and he was right on there. It helps that Shedeur Sanders threw for 290 yards and 3 touchdowns. You talk about Shedeur Sanders, you talk about Travis Hunter. By the way, Travis Hunter, yeah, that's right. He plays both ways. We don't forget that. Also, Madison, it's early in the season, but that looks
strike the pose.
And we see here offensively, right? They were able to run the football as well. Colorado is now 4-1, but they're not ranked. They play in the Big 12. That's one of the most powerful conferences in the country. So it's clear that my beef is with the broadcasters and writers. You, by the way, were part of this group who vote on the top 25 teams. Would you vote for Colorado?
I would. And yes, I was an AP Top 25 voter a couple years whenever I covered college football in Knoxville covering the Vols. You have to look at the strength of schedule, and you also have to take a look at the road wins. Colorado, in which had 2 huge road wins at Colorado State and at UCF, where at the time they were undefeated. So yes, Colorado would be in my top 25, but I hate that you had to remind me that I was a voter. It was a great honor, but also a lot of pressure because of guys like you.
We got her in Big 12 country now. We're all set.
Well, moving on, let's wrap up our look at Week 5 with the Big 12 Players of the Week. We did already tell you that Avery Johnson took home the honors on the offensive side of the ball. How about Newcomer of the Week? Cincinnati quarterback Brendan Sorsby, redshirt sophomore transfer from Indiana, and he had Texas Tech on their toes. Pete, 426 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, we see Sorsby. He's been absolutely surgical. Now, keep in mind, this game was a loss for Cincinnati, but they really put the country and the rest of the Big 12 on notice, taking this team, Texas Tech, down to the wire, thanks in part to this guy. Look at Brandon Sorsby, his ability to roll left and throw with the opposite hand. This is a really good quarterback.
Yeah, it looks like Cincinnati has found their quarterback. As for the Defensive Player of the Week, it's Arizona defensive back Tacario Davis. He's 6'4". He's a junior out of Long Beach, and he was blanketing Utah receivers all night long.
We talked about that they had 4 fourth down stops, the Arizona defense. Tacario Davis, look at this, whack! Just knocking balls down in huge moments. This win, the first time anybody has beat Utah on the road since 2017, an unranked team. That's huge.
Wow. Last but not least, Special Teams Player of the Week, TCU wide receiver J.P. Richardson. He's a senior, and he put his stamp on the game, showing that veteran leadership with a huge 89-yard punt return for a touchdown.
Yeah, this dude's pops, Bucky Richardson, played quarterback for the Houston Oilers after playing at Texas A&M. He had great vision. Look at this. Showing off great vision here. I mean, just weaving his way through tacklers. An amazing run, making Kansas State Jayhawks fans scratch their heads.
And that came at a pivotal time in the game at TCU with a much-needed win last week. Time for a quick break here on Inside the 12. But when we come back, a group of Big 12 wide receivers continue to make big-time catches in big-time games. Catch us with more when we come back. Welcome back to Inside the 12. Madison Hawk alongside Pete Souza. Big 12 wide receivers have been lighting up the scoreboard all season long. 7 different Big 12 wide receivers rank in the top 25 in FBS and receptions through Week 5. And Pete, no other conference has more than 4.
No, and you talk to people around the country, NFL draft experts and personnel guys, they know that this group, wide receiver group in the Big 12, is loaded with talent. There's a lot of guys who are rising up draft boards right now.
Let's take a look at some of them. Let's start with Arizona's Tet McMillan. Pete, we've heard about him all season long. Why does he stand out to you?
Well, I mentioned last week Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl absolutely loves Tet McMillan. I talked to my old college teammate this week, Steve Mensch with ESPN. He talked about McMillan, 6'5", 212 pounds, saying he is the 3rd best wide receiver coming into this draft behind only Travis Hunter, who we'll talk about, and Luther Burden. His ability to separate using his size. Again, we mentioned 6'5", but look at him running free all over the field. This is a guy who has athleticism and size, and he's got that great catch radius where he can literally make quarterbacks look very, very good.
Here's his receiving stats through Week 5. Take a look at the receiving yards, 503 total yards. That ranks 8th in the NCAA. Right now, he is a huge reason why Arizona is having a lot of early success. Our next wide receiver has been huge for the development of Baron Morton. It's Texas Tech 6-year senior Josh Kelly.
Yeah, he's another guy that has pro personnel guys around the NFL taking notice. He has great short area suddenness and quickness. He's a super senior too. A lot of experience, 4 years at Fresno State and 1 year at Washington State, has come into the Big 12 and using that strength and contact balance after the catch to separate himself literally from the competition. He also can cut on a dime, as we saw right there. When you can put the brakes on like that and change direction, you're going to get talent scouts at the next level paying attention to you.
Could be the best wide receiver Texas Tech has seen since Michael Crabtree, and that is saying something. Here's a look at his numbers. 39 receptions this season, 487 yards. That's 12th in NCAA. Right now, he is firing on all cylinders for Texas Tech. Moving on to TCU wide receiver Jack Bech. He is having a standout season, averaging nearly 130 yards per game.
Yeah, a transfer to TCU from LSU. He has splashed onto the scene here at TCU and has really become Josh Hoover's favorite wide receiver. Right there, we saw him sit underneath coverage and then break free and get yards after the catch. That makes him dynamic. Another ability right here that he has, those soft hands, can pick the football out of the air and is a decisive route runner. He can also get behind coverage. Having the speed to accelerate and separate from defenders is just one more thing that has him uniquely qualified.
Jack Bech has 647 receiving yards this season. That is second best in NCAA rankings. He has 6 touchdowns, which is tied for third. Right now, he is doing it all from TCU.
Great physicality, too. He likes the contact, and coaches like that.
Yeah, last but certainly not least, a guy you have all heard of before, Colorado's two-way superstar, Travis Hunter. If you've paid attention to college football, this name speaks for itself right now.
You're paying attention to draft coverage. Sorry, I cut you off. I'm so excited. He's a guy that could be taken in the top 5 of the NFL draft. Has not disappointed. He has survived a lot of pressure this season and has stepped up. There's early talk about postseason awards for Travis Hunter. He has not batted an eye. Great zone scheme fit, too, for the NFL, and that is what has made him Shedeur Sanders' best friend. He has the explosive athletic ability and is a twitchy and fluid wide receiver. Great change of direction, too. He's got it all.
Hunter ranks top 5 in multiple categories in NCAA rankings. You take a look at the touchdowns, 6. Also taking a look at the receiving yards, 561. I think what carries so much weight, though, Pete, as you pointed out, he is a two-way player.
Yeah, did we mention he plays defensive back, too? I think we just did.
And what a game he had last week as well. Time for another quick break here on Inside the 12, but stick with us. There are a lot of great matchups coming up in Week 6. We're going to preview those next. Welcome back to Inside the 12. Multiple Big 12 teams are on a bye this week, so we only have 6 matchups. We're going to start by previewing, though, Houston at TCU. This game is going to be played on Friday. TCU coming off a much-needed win at Kansas. The Frogs going into this one are a 2-touchdown favorite. There have been some questions around TCU's running game, but they did find some answers in Week 5. Head coach Sonny Dykes said expect to see more from freshman running back Jeremy Payne.
Yeah, Jeremy Payne is a Houston native. He ran the football awfully well. Sonny Dykes talked about the fact that when you have a freshman emerge like Payne did and show that you can trust him, that's something that's very good, especially for a TCU team, as you mentioned, that has had trouble running the football. Now, Houston, they haven't scored in 8 quarters, and their run defense has been porous. They've allowed 6 yards a carry and over 240 yards on the ground last week against Iowa State. Houston probably wishes they were one of those teams on a bye this week to kind of get it together.
Next up, West Virginia at Oklahoma State. The Cowboys coming off back-to-back losses. However, they were against top 25 opponents. So how do the Cowboys get back on track in Week 6?
Mike Gundy doing Mike Gundy stuff, right? He talked to his players after the game in the locker room and said, I'm more excited than ever. He said his players looked at him like he had 3 heads, but he likes when his team has their back against the wall. Gundy mentioned the fact that Garrett Green is a lot like Avery Johnson, who they had trouble stopping last year. Neil Brown, West Virginia's head coach, says Oklahoma State is a sleeping giant. And he talks about the fact that you mentioned, Madison, they had 2 tough losses against Kansas State and Utah. Ollie Gordon, 282 yards rushing against West Virginia last year. Could be a game for him to get on track.
Baylor traveling to Iowa State. The Bears are 2-3, but all of those losses were close games. Right now, it does feel like Iowa State has a lot of momentum, though. The Cyclones are 4-0 for the first time since 2000.
And they've done it sort of under the radar, right? 4-0, like you mentioned, behind Rocco Becht, and a stable of running backs. Matt Campbell mentioned that you can expect to see that running back by committee approach again this weekend when they take on Baylor. He also mentioned that this might be the best team on our schedule. Baylor did a great job in the second half against a very good BYU team, of blitzing nonstop, and it really stifled BYU Jake Retzlaff and that passing attack. Also good news for Baylor. They had a bevy of players that have been held out of play. Coach Aranda said they have been suspended. They could be back for this football game on Saturday. That's big for Baylor.
And once again, a huge shout out to Iowa State head coach Matt Campbell, who with a win over the weekend became the winningest coach in program history. Now, an in-state matchup we're going to preview where UCF is traveling to Florida. UCF is fresh off its first loss of the season to Colorado. They have a good chance to get back on track, though, because they're going to face a Gators team whose season has been full of ups and downs.
Yeah, Gus Malzahn says their program goals are still intact. A lot of opportunities for this UCF team going into this game in the Swamp. Not only can they win a recruiting battle in the state of Florida, they also have an opportunity to go back to a place where Gus Malzahn, we don't want to say he's comfortable, right? But he has had success coaching in the Swamp when he was the head coach for Auburn. One thing the Knights need to do this week, they need to pressure the passer. That was an Achilles heel for them against Colorado, allowing Shedeur Sanders to be elusive in the pocket and find receivers all over the field.
To your point, Gus Malzahn, no stranger to the SEC. Kansas at Arizona State. This is going to be an interesting one. Kansas hasn't won since week 1. They're only one of the season. However, all of those losses have been down to the wire games. You can't overlook them, but what is it going to take for Kansas to get over the hump and get a much needed win?
They got to stick with that running game and limit what Jaden Daniels has been doing mistake-wise, right? Devin Neal is a great reason why Kansas has a chance every week they take the field. But as far as Kenny Dillingham is concerned and the Arizona State coaching staff, they're getting their team ready this week, telling them, hey, this is the exact same Kansas team that was ranked atop the Big 12 before the season started. They still have all of that talent. Kansas has been finding ways to beat itself. They forced 3 turnovers against TCU, but they still lost by 2 scores. They have had a sharp start to games and coming out of the locker room at halftime. Lance Leipold does a great job getting these guys ready, but they're going to have to do it themselves sometimes when they get into quarter breaks.
Yeah, last certainly not least, though, Texas Tech traveling to Arizona. The Red Raiders are off to their best start since 2013, but Arizona rolling right now after that huge upset win over Utah. What matchup are you watching in this one?
Defenses, really. We know both of these offenses are going to score a lot of points, but the defense that steps up and makes the big plays, that's the defense that is going to win. You mentioned it, Madison. 4-1 for Texas Tech, an amazing start for this team. As far as running the football and scoring, Taj Brooks has been that dude for Texas. He's a runner that they can count on. Joey McGuire was open about the fact, though, that they're a little worried about facing Noah Fifita. He is a dual-threat quarterback that can run and throw. He'll be throwing, by the way, to his old high school teammate again, Tet McMillan, who is a real problem for the opposition.
Well, there you have it. Once again, a full week of big-time games with Inside the Big 12. A reminder, those games do begin on Friday with TCU in Houston. Time now for another quick break. When we come back here on Inside the 12, a former Arizona standout joins us for our weekly pick segment. Welcome back to Inside the 12. Madison Hawk alongside Pete Souza. Time now for one of our favorite segments of the entire show. We take a look at our picks last week, first and foremost. And the biggest takeaway from this graphic that I do want to point out is I am still one game ahead of you, Pete.
Clinging to a one-game advantage. A lot of time left, Madison.
This week's guest picker is a former All-American linebacker from Arizona. We'd be here all day if I listed every single one of his accolades, so I'm just going to welcome Scooby right to the show. Scooby, welcome. I will say you're our third guest picker on Inside the 12, but you by far have the best name.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys having me on.
All right, well, far be it for me to disagree with a Chuck Bednarik Award winner, but I might have to on this segment. We'll see.
All right, well, let's start with this Friday's game. Houston at TCU. That's a 7:30 kickoff on ESPN. Scooby, who do you like in this one?
I'm liking TCU. I like Sonny Dykes. I think he's a good coach. I like the way he goes about his business. So I'm going to take the Horned Frogs on Friday night.
I'm going with Scooby, TCU for sure.
Yep, TCU. I think they're rolling right now after a big win last week, so they have my pick. Moving on, West Virginia versus Oklahoma State, a 4 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2. Oklahoma State needs a win. Scooby, can they do it in week 6?
I don't know. I'm gonna go with West Virginia.
Ooh.
I got some Rich Rod ties to West Virginia, and then one of my old coaches, the coaches at West Virginia. So yeah, I'm gonna take West Virginia.
Okay.
The Rich Rodriguez connection. I like that. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. I'm going against Scooby.
Okay.
I have to go with the Cowboys as well. I think they're ready for a win after back-to-back losses. Baylor travels to number 16 Iowa State. That game's at 7:30 Eastern on Fox. Who do you like in this one, Scooby?
I like Iowa State. I think they. I watched a few of their games. I think they are big-time contenders in the Big 12, and I'm excited to watch them play.
Yeah, I like Iowa State and Rocco Becht as well. I'm going with Scooby.
Iowa State has my pick as well. It's an in-state battle as UCF heads to Gainesville to face the Florida Gators. Kickoff for that one's at 7:45 Eastern on the SEC Network. Scooby, is it UCF or is it Florida in your mind?
I hope UCF pulls it off. It's a non-conference game, so I think a conference or it's a non-conference game, so a win would be good for the conference to show their show how good they are.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Scooby. I like Florida. I'm pulling for the Knights to win, but I like Florida in the Swamp.
I'm going UCF. I'm from Knoxville. You will never hear me root for the Florida Gators, so I have UCF in this one. Kansas at Arizona State, kickoff at 8 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2. Who do you like in this one, Scooby?
Well, I always want the Sun Devils to lose, so I'm going to pick Kansas. So I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm pulling for Kansas.
I'm going with Arizona State. I like Arizona State.
Yeah, I wonder why you always want the Sun Devils to lose. I'm going with Arizona State as well. Texas Tech traveling to Arizona. That's at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern on Fox. That's a late one. And once again, I do feel kind of silly asking you this, considering your ties and where your allegiance is. Who do you have in this one, though, Scooby?
I like Arizona. I mean, I think Arizona's they're peaking at the right time. I think that defense is playing very well. That Tacario Davis, he's coming off of a huge game, 7 deflected balls. I mean, I think the defense can get a few more turnovers, but I feel like some of those contested balls that they're contesting, and if they get their hands on them, I feel like that'd be a huge difference maker in games to come.
I agree with you, Scooby. That Arizona defense playing like 11 Scooby Wrights. I like them to win also on Saturday night.
Yeah, it's hard to go against Arizona with what they did last week. So Arizona has my pick as well. Well, this was a lot of fun, Scooby. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to find out next week on Inside the 12 how your picks did.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scooby.
Well, that was fun once again. So I have to ask you, like I do every week, after these picks, how are you feeling?
I feel very good. I do. There's so much parity in this league, but I feel like we're getting a little bit of a feel.
I do feel like you say you feel good every week, but I'm still one game ahead of you, so I guess that means that I feel really, really good,
I'm just going to start saying, talk to me next Thursday.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for another edition of Inside the 12. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy your college football weekend.